Picture this. One of the most enduring partnerships in rock history suddenly cast in a different light. Keith Richards, the unshakable rhythm guitarist of the Rolling Stones, recently opened up about his late bandmate Charlie Watts, sharing details that left fans reeling. Known for his stoicism and unflappable demeanor, Watts was the heartbeat of the Rolling Stones for decades. But according to Richards, there was a darker, more difficult side to the reserve drummer, a side that often clashed with the chaos and creativity of the band. Think of the Rolling Stones as a volatile mix of fire and ice. On one end, you had Mick Jagger, the flamboyant showman, and Keith Richards, the rebellious icon. On the other was Charlie Watts, cool and composed, seemingly above the drama. But still waters run deep, and Hott's steely resolve often collided with the fiery personalities around him. Watts famously clashed with Jagger during a heated moment in the 1980s. During a band meeting, Jagger reportedly dismissed Watts as his drummer, a comment that unleashed Watts' quiet fury. That night, Watts, dressed in a tailored suit, walked to Jagger's hotel room and delivered a punch that echoed louder than any drum beat. The incident was a rare glimpse of Watts' tightly controlled anger, a reminder that the seemingly placid drummer was a force to be reckoned with. Watts's relationship with Richards wasn't without friction either. While they shared a deep musical bond, their personal lives couldn't have been more different. Richards's unpredictable lifestyle and frequent brushes with danger clashed with Watts' meticulous habits and later sobriety. These differences sometimes created tension, particularly during periods when Richards' chaotic behavior threatened the band's stability. Charlie Watts was a man whose unwavering principles shaped not only his identity but also his relationships, and not always for the better. Picture this, a young drummer, fiercely committed to his craft, thrust into the whirlwind of 1960s rock stardom. While others in the music industry were swept up in the allure of fame and fortune, Watts stood firm, a figure of quiet rebellion against the commercial pressures that sought to compromise his artistic integrity. But this steadfastness, admirable as it was, sometimes painted him as difficult, even cold, to those who didn't share his vision. Early in his career, Watts was a beacon of resistance to the managers and producers who tried to mold the Rolling Stones into something more palatable for mainstream audiences. These industry gatekeepers, eager to smooth the band's rough edges and capitalize on their growing popularity, were met with Watts's unyielding stance. For Charlie, music was sacred, a reflection of raw, unfiltered creativity. The idea of diluting their sound for commercial gain was, to him, a betrayal of the band's authenticity. While his resolve earned him respect from some, it also created tension within the group, particularly with Mick Jagger, who often saw compromise as a necessary step in their meteoric rise. The conflicts didn't end there. Beyond the Rolling Stones, Watts' principled nature put him at odds with many of his contemporaries in the music world. He had little patience for the debauchery and recklessness that came to define the rock and roll lifestyle of the 1970s. Sid Vicious, the volatile bassist of the Sex Pistols, epitomized everything Watts detested. Watts' disdain for Vicious wasn't merely a clash of personalities, but a philosophical divide. Watts saw music as a disciplined craft, while Vicious treated it as an anarchic spectacle. Their encounters, though infrequent, were tense and underscored Watts's reputation as a no-nonsense figure in a world that thrived on chaos. Watts' critiques extended to some of rock's biggest names, including members of Led Zeppelin. While the world marveled at Zeppelin's larger-than-life personas and epic antics, Watts was unimpressed. He viewed their excessive lifestyles as distractions from the art itself, a perspective that alienated him from the more flamboyant figures of the era. His refusal to indulge in the rock star mythos wasn't just a personal choice. It was a quiet condemnation of those who did. To some, this made him a refreshing anomaly. To others, it made him aloof and judgmental. And yet, Watts never saw himself as superior. His criticism stemmed not from arrogance but from a deep-seated belief in discipline and authenticity. Rock stardom, he insisted, was a job, not an excuse for hedonism. Think of it. While his peers were making headlines for their outrageous antics, Watts was in his hotel room, sketching or reading, steadfastly avoiding the pitfalls of fame. This separation from the excesses of his peers made him a respected figure, but also a lonely one, often out of step with the world he inhabited. Watts's principled approach to music and life was a double-edged sword. It earned him the admiration of those who valued his integrity, but also created rifts with those who saw his stance as inflexible. His journey outside the band was marked by a paradox. He was a rock star who rejected the very culture that made him famous, a craftsman in an industry driven by spectacle. For Watts, staying true to himself often meant standing alone, a choice he made time and time again, even when it came at a cost. Though he presented a facade of unshakable calm, Charlie Watts' private life was anything but serene. Picture this: the stoic drummer, who seemed impervious to the chaos swirling around him on stage, secretly crumbling under the weight of fame and the relentless machine of the Rolling Stones. By the 1980s, the band was at a crossroads. Fractured relationships, exhausting tours, and mounting personal pressures left even its most grounded member teetering on the edge. For Watts, who had always been the quiet cornerstone of the group, the cracks began to show in the form of alcoholism and drug addiction, vices he had once silently judged in his bandmates. Unlike Mick Jagger's flamboyant escapades or Keith Richards' legendary brushes with death, Watts' descent into addiction was a far more insidious affair. There were no dramatic headlines or public meltdowns. Instead, his struggle played out in the shadows, hidden behind his meticulously crafted image. His addiction was slow, creeping into his life under the guise of coping with the pressure to maintain the unrelenting pace of rock and roll stardom. The very qualities that defined him, his discipline, his restraint, became his shackles as he sought solace in substances that dulled the relentless noise in his mind. At home, Watts' addiction seeped into the foundation of his marriage to Shirley Ann Shepard. Their relationship, once a sanctuary from the madness of touring, became another battlefield. Shirley, fiercely private and loyal, had always been his anchor, the one who kept him tethered to reality amidst the band's debauchery. But now even she struggled to reach him. Think of this. The couple's once quiet evenings together turned into silent confrontations, Shirley watching helplessly as the man she loved retreated further into himself. Watts, known for his unwavering commitment to her, now carried the guilt of knowing his addiction was driving a wedge between them. The estrangement was palpable. Shirley's patience, while immense, wasn't infinite, and Watts's increasing distance left her feeling like she was losing not just her husband, but the very foundation of their life together. Friends of the couple described a tension that was heartbreaking to witness. A man caught in a spiral of self-destruction, and a woman desperate to pull him back from the edge. But Shirley, ever resilient, never abandoned him, even in the darkest moments. Watts' addiction didn't just test his marriage, it tested his identity. For years, he had prided himself on being the antithesis of the stereotypical rock star, grounded, responsible, and impervious to the temptations of fame. Now he found himself staring into the mirror, confronted by a version of himself he barely recognized. The quiet dignity that had always defined him was replaced by shame, a burden he carried silently, even among his bandmates. Keith Richards, no stranger to addiction himself, reportedly noticed the change in Watts, but knew better than to push him. This wasn't a battle anyone else could fight for him. His eventual recovery in the late 1980s marked not just a turning point, but a hard-fought victory. It wasn't a miraculous overnight transformation, but a painstaking process, one that required Watts to confront the very demons he had tried to suppress. Picture this: the reserved drummer who rarely sought attention, finding the courage to admit his vulnerability and rebuild himself piece by piece. It was a testament to his quiet strength, a reminder that even the most unassuming figures carry battles that demand immense bravery. In many ways, Watts' recovery was emblematic of his character, steady, deliberate, and deeply personal. He didn't seek accolades for overcoming his addiction, nor did he allow it to define him. Instead, he emerged with a renewed sense of purpose, his commitment to both his music and his family stronger than ever. His redemption wasn't just a victory over addiction, it was a reclaiming of his identity, a reaffirmation of the quiet resilience that had always set him apart. Despite his calm demeanor, Watts' intensity often intimidated those who worked closely with him. He demanded excellence and had little patience for mediocrity, qualities that made him both a brilliant musician and a difficult colleague. Stories of Watts cutting through egos with a single, pointed remark became legendary. Whether in the studio or during tense negotiations, his words carried weight, and his presence alone could shift the dynamic of a room. Charlie Watts's life was a study in contrasts, a man who balanced the chaos of rock stardom with an unyielding sense of discipline, who inspired both admiration and frustration in equal measure. While his conflicts and struggles painted a picture of complexity, they also underscored the depth of his character. Watts was more than just the Rolling Stones drummer. He was a man whose quiet strength and inner battles made him as fascinating as the music he helped create. As Keith Richards' revelations send shockwaves through the world of rock, they serve as a reminder that even legends are human, flawed, fiery, and unforgettable. Charlie Watts' story, rich with drama and resilience, will forever remain a cornerstone of rock history, a testament to the complexities of fame and the enduring power of music.